Southern California, good afternoon, and welcome to another edition of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Today we have ourselves a jam-packed show as we have a lot to get into, such as the Chargers locking up the 5 seed. But it came at a little bit of a price. What price was that, and will it affect them come their game against the Jacksonville Jaguars? And the Rams sadly lost their final game of the season to the Seattle Seahawks. Let's just say some people were not too happy, as it was kind of a weird game, as I got a lot to talk about in that game. Also, how about UCLA men's basketball? They are red hot, having won 12 in a row, and UC Santa Barbara men's basketball has won 9 in a row. Can the Gauchos repeat as Big West Conference champions in the Big West Conference tournament? Or will the other Big West Conference teams have something to say about that? Also, the Lakers and Clippers have been up and down, where the Lakers lost a heartbreaker yesterday to the Dallas Mavericks, and also the LA Kings are 2 points behind the Vegas Golden Knights. So they're something to keep an eye on. All that and more here on the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And welcome one, welcome all to another edition of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Thank you all for joining me on this beautiful Friday afternoon, Friday morning, Friday wherever you are listening from. Either way, you have made your way into episode 119 of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. With all that said and done, let us begin. But first and foremost, the SoCal Supreme Sports Show would not be where it's at without IE Sports Radio providing the platform to go live on. You can follow IE Sports Radio on Twitter, Instagram, and on TikTok at IE Sports Radio. And they also have a Facebook, which when you go to the search bar, just type in the word IE, then sports, then radio, then click on the black and white logo that says IE Sports Radio, and then boom, you're following us and basically all of your live sports news and needs. Also, they have a website, www.iesportsradio.com, and when you go there, you will see a Patreon link at the top once you click it, and when you click it, it will start off at $5 a month once you subscribe to our Patreon page. This will get you a shout from all of our shows, including this one, and higher tiers include IE Sports Radio merchandise, access to ISRU, the podcasting university of IE Sports Radio, and even a chance to be featured on a segment of our flagship show, The Defining Moment with Larry B. For the past 8 years and counting, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. All the while, we've been continuing to be by the fans and for the fans. So with your help, we are ready to take the next biggest step. Thank you to everyone for all of your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that sports. Shout out to our Patreon supporters, Bay Area Raised Apparel, Key to the Gate, a donor that wishes to remain anonymous, and Marcus Losgreat, who is actually in the chat room. He says, "Oh my goodness, your boy has finally made it back." Hey, I'm happy to have you back, my brother. And also Larry B is in the chat room. He says, SoCal, the home of a bunch of crappy teams last season for some reason, but it's still home. Hey, there were some good teams last season. Last season, you got the Rams that won the Super Bowl. You had LAFC, which pretty much was a super team, but they beat the other super team from the East. And then there were some teams that underachieved. But with all that said and done, let us begin. And yes, IE Sports Radio has all that merchandise for your needs, whether it's tank tops, hoodies, t-shirts, caps, build and curve, straight build and duck build curved, all that sort of thing. So we got to start off with the Rams just because their game against the Seahawks was meaningless. So I actually watched this game because I actually did a live broadcast on this game on Wellington Sports Radio, and it was kind of an interesting game. So the Rams I wouldn't say obviously lost. I actually picked them to win, but they lost in overtime to the Seahawks. But they were neck and neck with the Seahawks throughout the entire game, as basically they led 13-6 at halftime. It was kind of a weird game. And again, they obviously didn't have their star players. They had to utilize a bunch of used up parts in order to basically get to the victory and to their possible victory. And then Geno Smith was able to get a touchdown to Tyler Lockett. It was 13-13. And then the Rams kicked a field goal, 16-13. And here was the interesting thing. So the Seahawks got all the way down to the red zone on their second-to-last drive of the game. And fortunately, the Seahawks have one of the worst red zone offenses in the league, kind of on par with the Broncos, as they basically swung and missed when they ran the ball with Kenneth Walker. And fortunately for Sean McVay, he was able to call timeout, which did matter just because it gave his team one last drive. And after the Seahawks kicked a field goal, the Rams got their final drive, which wound up being the biggest wet fart ever, as because they went 3-and-out. And eventually the Seahawks drove down the field. And this is where kind of some of the BS starts. Well, it actually started earlier in the game, earlier in the third quarter, but some of the BS that happened was Geno Smith running for the first down, and then he ran right into Jalen Ramsey, and then a flag comes in, and it's a 15-yard penalty on Jalen Ramsey because it's an unsportsmanlike penalty or a late hit out of bounds. But it's like Ramsey didn't even do anything. Like, Geno Smith was running right to him, and then everyone thought that Ramsey was the one that forced him out of bounds. Like, now, I would have understood if Ramsey went right at Geno Smith, but I think that was a little bit of a Geno Smith flop on his part. And eventually it got the Seahawks in the field goal range. Fortunately for Sean McVay and the Rams, they had a timeout remaining, and when Jason Myers went to kick the 46-yard field goal try, it went off the right upright and it was no good. And eventually overtime was needed as Seattle basically got the ball first. They went 3-and-out, which was to the credit of the Rams defense. And here I thought Geno Smith threw the ball away on third and 9, and I thought it was basically intentional grounding. And I think Sean McVay thought it was intentional grounding as well. There was no one in the area, but I guess he was still in the pocket, but there was no one around. So eventually Seahawks had to punt it away, and I think the Rams had to take it 80 yards for the touchdown and like maybe 50-ish yards for the field goal. And Baker Mayfield launched a big-time deep ball where it was unfortunately picked off. He tried to hit Van Jefferson for a big gain, but then it was picked off by Quandre Diggs, which was actually the Rams' first turnover of the game. And eventually the Seahawks drove down the field, got Jason Myers in a better field goal range. This time it was a 32-yarder. And eventually that was the Rams' final game of the season. They lost 19-16 in their final game. And sadly for Detroit Lions fans, the Seahawks needed to lose that game. But unfortunately, that was not the case, as the Seahawks eventually got to make the playoffs just because the Detroit Lions beat the Green Bay Packers, which I'll get into that in a little bit later. As we welcome Mike Pat in the chat room, in the live Spreaker chat room. He says, "Have a great show, sir." Thank you, Mike. So the Rams finished a disappointing 5-12. They now have the most losses of any post-Super Bowl champion, which I think is rather funny. I mean, they made history in the worst way, so yeah. So now this kind of begs the question, and this has been the million-dollar question for everybody. Is Sean McVay going to leave the is Sean McVay going to leave the Rams and just pursue being a commentator? Because the Rams are in a nasty rebuild, and he already won his Super Bowl championship ring, and then last calendar year he lost his grandfather, which I think is really sad. And then he's obviously had to deal with the losses, and then losing his players to injuries left and right, and it was just not just a fun game or fun season for the Rams. And obviously he has to be like stressed about it, and and bless his heart, he managed it the best way he could. So basically, it's an interesting little concept for Sean McVay. Does he want to come back, and will he be back? Marcus says he created the rebuild. He should be forced to pick up the pieces. Well, the front office was the one that traded away the picks. I don't know if what's-his-face, McVay had too much say in it, but it was the owners, Stan Kroenke, and the GM that basically said F them picks, and yeah. So this is going to be completely... I personally think he'll stay. I don't really have a full-on opinion, but I think he stays. I just think that I just don't think he'll go into... He'll go into like retirement from coaching right away, just because he's only, he's like 36, 37, and the dude is basically the youngest player, or the youngest coach to win a Super Bowl, and the dude had some good little coaching prospects. So I just don't think he leaves right away. And Marcus does make a good point. He should be forced to pick up the pieces. I mean, you live as a team that won a Super Bowl, and then you die as a team that won a Super Bowl. Obviously, Odell Beckham Jr. and Von Miller both leaving didn't help matters, but it is what it is. I think he comes back. Marcus says he's looking like a complete front runner. Well, yes and no. This was the Rams' first losing season under him, but for me, it's not all his fault. I mean, the Rams don't have any draft capital. The injuries happen to every team, Chargers. But for the Rams, I just don't think they lived up to expectations. And it is tough to basically have expectations planted on you and then just live up to them, especially when you're playing especially when right out the gate you're facing a Super Bowl favorite, and then the entire NFC has gotten better, and then you lose your star wide receiver, your quarterback eventually gets hurt, and then everything just falls apart. Oh, and we also can't forget about the offensive line. The offensive line eventually was the straw that broke the camel's back, or in this case, the straw that broke Matthew Stafford's back. Well, not quite back, but his neck area or spinal cord. Either way, it was just not a good season for the Rams, and I hope they do get back into playoff form. I think they can. It's just that they got to get everyone healthy, and then they got to basically... free agency is going to be quite interesting. I obviously don't have the draft capital, but it is what it is. So that's basically that for the Rams. I have nothing more to talk about from them, but I actually do need to talk about the BS that happened in their game. So I think it was on the third to last drive. Oh no, it was actually on the second to last drive from the Seahawks, where the Seahawks were forced to punt. And here's what happened. So Michael Dixon of the Seahawks was punting, and eventually one of the Seahawks players, Jonathan Abram, he grabbed one of the Rams players and he threw it right into the punter. And eventually that was called roughing the kicker, which, okay, I don't understand that rule. I understand the player ran into the kicker, so that is true, but he didn't run into him on his own free will. Jonathan Abram grabbed him, and then he just lassoed him over to Dixon, and then that was eventually roughing the kicker. So it's like, Jiminy Christmas, dude. Like, I just could not, I couldn't get that call. I honestly did not understand how that's roughing the kicker. I kind of get it just because the opposing player did run into the kicker, but he was being forced into. Like, what is he supposed to do at that point? He's getting thrown like a ragdoll over to the punter, and what's he supposed to do? Is he supposed to try to grab on to the guy that threw him and then just try to take him down? And then that's a holding penalty. Like, I just think that was a BS call. And then another thing that the refs kind of missed was one of the, I think it was DK Metcalf. He put, after the flag came in on the 15-yard penalty, DK Metcalf put his, I think it was his hand, if not his finger, inside the helmet of Jalen Ramsey, and he just kind of just pushed him away. Obviously, Jalen Ramsey flopped, but that should have also been a penalty. And I think the rules analyst, Mike Pereira, said that was a missed penalty, which, talk about facing two teams. Like, I'm not going to try to make excuses for the Rams, because they had many opportunities to put this game away, but that's just bad, dude. Like, it's not right to basically, make those calls. I mean, the roughing the kicker penalty was the most questionable, but it's like, and then obviously the unsportsmanlike conduct from Ramsey was also questionable, and then the missed putting the finger inside the helmet of Jalen Ramsey was also questionable. So it's like, I wouldn't say those plays mattered, but it's like, it's not convenient for the Rams, in my opinion. So, yikes. But it is what it is, and the Seahawks are off to the playoffs, where they're most likely going to get hammered by the San Francisco 49ers. I'd bet the farm on the Seahawks losing that game and the Niners winning. So, there's that right there. So let's jump on over to the SoCal team that's actually making the playoffs, the Chargers. They actually are the 5 seed, as earlier in the day, the Baltimore Ravens lost to the Cincinnati Bengals, which eventually saw the Chargers locking up the 5 seed, which was awesome. That's the good news. So, as you all remember, I basically predicted the Chargers, if that were to happen, the Chargers were to rest most of their starters. Well, that wasn't the case. Well, the Chargers decided to play their starters, like Herbert, Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler, DeAndre Carter, Mike Williams, all those guys. And eventually, the Chargers lost the game 31-28. Now, I could care less about the score. At that point of the Ravens beating the Bengals, I could care less about what happened with the Chargers. I got to that point where I just watched the Rams-Seahawks just to take my mind off the Chargers and Broncos. But little did I know, I actually found out that Mike Williams, Joey Bosa, and Kenneth Murray all got hurt. Now, Murray's injury wasn't that serious, and eventually Joey Bosa's injury wasn't serious, but Mike Williams suffered a lower back injury, which eventually was a contusion, but then it was revealed to be a fracture, which now has him out for the wild card game. And basically, the Chargers did play their starters in that game, and they did pull Justin Herbert in the fourth quarter for Chase throwing 10 passes per game, Daniel, as he actually found Keenan Allen for the touchdown, which Keenan Allen actually was the bright spot for the game, but the game doesn't really matter to me. What matters to me is now Mike Williams is hurt. He's out for Saturday's game, and he's also out for a majority of the Chargers' playoff run, unless the Chargers somehow make it to the Super Bowl. Notice the words somehow make it to the Super Bowl, just because we can't really trust the Chargers as far as we could throw them. But for the Chargers, they will be playing the Jacksonville Jaguars, who won last Saturday against the Tennessee Titans, winning the AFC South. And here's the thing for the Chargers and the Jaguars. The Jaguars are actually one of the hotter teams, as they have surged all the way back from whatchamacallit, I wouldn't say the depths of the AFC South, but last year they had such an abysmal season, and where they were the number 1 pick, and then eventually with the new head coach of Doug Peterson, and with the revitalized Trevor Lawrence and all of the other players, basically the Jaguars are a whole different team. They're not like the Saxonville from back in from 2017, but they're still up there in terms of they're probably the most improved team along with the Giants. And Marcus says he's betting against the Chargers. Well, that's actually that would be a good idea. I think that wouldn't be the worst idea just because aren't they I think they're 1.5 or 2 point favorites in that game. So I don't blame you for betting against the Chargers, but he does say Jags by 7 points, LOL. Yeah, well, I mean, it's not a bad prediction, but other than Mike Williams being injured, this is probably the biggest 50-50 game out there. Fortunately for the Chargers, Mike Williams is the only player that was hurt, as he's the only player that's pretty much out for the game, as basically the Chargers have pretty much everyone else except for Rashawn Slater and a few other guys. And Slater might be back for the playoffs. The Chargers actually opened his 21-day practice window, and now he is back practicing. He is not going to play this weekend, so that is also a tough loss. He actually suffered I think it was a tricep injury back in week 3 against the Jaguars, which has definitely been a big loss. But for the Chargers, this is going to be quite the tough battle. They're playing at Jacksonville. They have the 5:15 game, and they are playing on national TV against the Jaguars. They've played on NBC the past 3 times against the Niners, the Chiefs, and the Dolphins, which they wound up winning 1 out of those 3 games, but all of those games were competitive. So for the game against Jacksonville, this is going to be quite the tough one, and if the Chargers are going to win, they're going to have to win with defense. I think that's kind of their big selling point, and Michael Davis has been outstanding as a cornerback. He's definitely filled the void for J.C. Jackson ever since he got hurt and has been lost for the season. But what the Chargers need to do is they have to get pressure on Trevor Lawrence. They had 0 sacks in the previous game against Jacksonville. And what was worse is they also have to get the run game going. That Jacksonville game, the first go-around, was disastrous. As, once again, they had 0 sacks against Trevor Lawrence. And in addition, Austin Eckler only had 4 carries, and then Mike Williams, who isn't going to play, only had 1 catch. And also the Chargers lost Joey Bosa that game. They lost Keenan Allen that game. They lost Jalen Guyton, which that could have totally been avoided, but it is what it is. So basically, this is the game where the Chargers are mostly back to as full strength as they can be. But it's just going to be tough. I think the defense, once again, is going to have to be the winning point for the Chargers. The Chargers have to come up big defensively. Obviously, slowing down the run game is going to be crucial just because Travis Etienne, he wasn't explosive against Tennessee last week, but he was very effective. And last time the Jaguars and Chargers faced, it was James Robinson who actually came up big, and now he's with New York, the Jets, and now it's going to have to be the Travis Etienne show, and the Chargers are going to have to do their best to try to slow him down. They haven't done the best when it comes to slowing down running backs, such as Cam Akers and Latavius Murray, and obviously Derrick Henry. We can't forget about Derrick Henry. And we're not going to count the Colts just because the Colts were a complete mess. And then the Dolphins in their game, they barely even ran the ball, and even when they did, they lost it and whatnot. So for me, I really think the Chargers can win this game, but it's all about jumping out to a big lead, having the defense just basically not. The defense has to come up big, just because if they don't, then the Jags are at least putting 20 points on them. So Marcus says the Chargers' run defense is sparkling blue toilet water. Okay, that was pretty good, and he's not wrong. He is absolutely correct. Sparkling blue toilet water. I really think that definitely describes them. I mean, it's not the worst run defense as in years past, but it's certainly a far cry from being the best. So I mean, it could be worse. It could be the Seahawks run defense or the Rams run defense or any other bad run defense out there. So overall, for my prediction, I got the Chargers winning, obviously, 31-24. It's going to be close, though. I think it's going to be a slugfest, but I really feel the Chargers have what it takes. I just can't go against them. And if the Chargers do manage to get out of the wild card round, I will be content the rest of the way. Even if the Chargers do get blasted in the divisional round, I will be quite content. Just because everyone and their mom said that the Chargers were done, they were cooked, they were pretty much dead in the water because of injuries and whatnot, and bad losses here and there. The fact that the Chargers have been through heck and back means that the Chargers have basically... It's a testament to the Chargers and how they've stuck together despite all the injuries and all of the media talk about how they have underperformed. But again, it's gonna basically come down to defense, and the defense is probably gonna have to come up big in the second half, and it's gonna have to be a collective defensive effort. Whether it's Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, Michael Davis, Asante Samuel Jr., Bryce Callahan, Kyle Van Noy, Morgan Fox, all those type of guys. It's going to have to be a defensive effort from the entire Chargers defense. If they do so, then they will advance to the divisional round, where it's going to be even uglier than that. But I just want the Chargers to get the win. I just really want to see them win one playoff game and go from there. If they win one playoff game, I will have zero complaints going forward. Like, even if they get destroyed in the divisional round, I will not be frustrated. I will not tear out my hair. I will not blast anybody or just get all angry and whatnot. I will just be content the rest of the way. Well, I'll still judge, but it's like, still. I will not be utterly disappointed, because only 6 teams from each division advance to the divisional round, and only 8 teams are in this position in the divisional round at the end of the wild card weekend, or super wild card weekend. So I got the Chargers winning 31-24. I could probably go lower and maybe say 27-20, but I just think that 31... I mean, the Chargers scored 28 points last week, but they scored 31 against the Rams, though the Rams' defense was broken. And then they also scored 20 against Indianapolis, and they scored 17 against Tennessee, and then they scored 24 against Miami. So, I'll just stay with what I got. I can't go back on my pick now. 31-24 Chargers, and yes, and Marcus says he will always judge, and yes, judge, jury, and executioner. But that's basically my prediction right there, and I just gotta say this for Brandon Staley. I'm disappointed by how he basically... I understand it's tough to manage a game, but you don't have like third stringers. You don't have like second or third stringers that can play for the Chargers. You can't just leave some of your top players inactive. It's like, why? Like, whatever can go wrong will go wrong, and could go wrong. Well, yeah, whatever can go wrong could go wrong, and it eventually did go wrong. So, unfortunately, Brandon Staley made his bed. Now he has to sleep in it. And Stephen A. Smith of First Take said, if the Chargers lose to the Jacksonville Jaguars, then he should be fired. I'm 50-50 on that. I mean, Brandon Staley did help the Chargers, despite all the injuries, navigate to 4 of their last 5 games, which eventually got them into the 5 seed. But you also have to give credit to some of the other teams that did help the Chargers out, like the Raiders against the Patriots, the Steelers against the Raiders, as well as the Bengals against the Patriots, and the Jaguars against the Jets, and then the Bengals against the Ravens in Week 18. So, and then the Steelers against the Ravens in Week 17. So, yeah, the Chargers have had some lucky bounces or lucky results going their way. Well, fortunate results. I guess I wouldn't necessarily say lucky, just because games are won by pure skill and not by luck. End of discussion. But overall, it looks like Justin Herbert may have to be Superman again, or Thor, or whatever thunder and lightning hero that you all have him as. But overall, we may have to have Justin Herbert play God yet again, and he's going to have to take on another God in... What would a good God for Trevor Lawrence be? We'll just call him Zeus. Or Loki. Either way, the Chargers are going to have to lean heavily on Justin Herbert, if not the defense mostly. Like, Justin Herbert has to play his best game. And if the defense the defense gave up 31 points to the Broncos, with the majority of the starters playing, but hopefully that is the bad game out of the way for the Chargers. Hopefully they did get that bad game out of the way. I mean, Phillip Rivers back in 2017, 2018 got his bad game out of the way against the Denver Broncos, according to one of my friends, because I remember it perfectly. I basically was frustrated at how Phillip Rivers played in Week 17 back when the NFL was a 17-week season and not an 18-week season. And then one of my friends said, well, Phillip Rivers just got his bad game out of the way. Maybe this is his turning point. And I guess he didn't really do too bad the rest of the way back in those playoffs against Baltimore and New England, but it just wasn't pretty. So anyway, I'm just hoping the Chargers got their bad game out of the way against the Broncos and that they could just go forward and basically just win this game and just go from there. We'll see. Alright, but that's basically that for everything NFL. I'll get back to the NFL a little bit later in the show, but I do have to give a congratulations to Georgia on winning the college football national championship. Now, I know this doesn't have anything to do with Southern California, but you got to remember that the game was played at SoFi Stadium, and that the SoFi Stadium is located in Southern California, so I have to speak on this briefly. Anyway, so the Georgia Bulldogs defeated the TCU Horned Frogs 65-7 as they won the game at SoFi Stadium in Inglewood, California. So congratulations to the Bulldogs on winning their second straight national championship, and they went undefeated, so that's tough to do, honestly. So that is that. And I'm not going to really talk more on college football. I've basically said what I need to say. Except, actually, I have one more quick thing on USC football. So it was announced earlier this week that according to Lincoln Riley, they have decided USC football will not be making any changes to its coaching personnel. Which means, unfortunately, Alex Grinch will be staying as the Trojans' defensive coordinator, which... Oh, I'm already sick to my stomach. And I even basically tweeted this out on the SoCal Supreme Sports Show Twitter account. I could already feel the pain and disgust from all USC football fans out there. And if you're a USC football fan, you basically are puking your guts out just because I wanted Alex Grinch gone. After that gong show against Tulane... After that gong show against Utah, and the gong show against UCLA, and the gong show against Cal, and the gong show against Arizona, and the gong show against any team that they allowed to score 30 or more points, Grinch has to be gone. And Marcus says it best in the chat room. Marcus Looks Great says it best in the chat room. Boo! My words exactly. I totally agree. And now I'm scared for next year. Kinda. I mean, Caleb Williams does come back, but they lose Jordan Addison and Travis Dye to the NFL draft, and Tui Pelotu, who I think is like the safety or edge rusher for the Trojans. But it's all about rebuilding, and the Trojans have actually gotten some good transfers. I'm going to get into that probably in the near future, but they are 3 points away from having the number one transfer class of the class of 2023, which makes me a little happy. But but that's just a small fragment of the 1,000-piece puzzle. USC needs to get that defense shored up ASAP. Otherwise, I mean, they could have the best offense in the world, but if their defense isn't stopping a fly from crossing the first down marker, then honestly, I'm terrified. But that's just my little thing. And we're talking about a fly that has basically been swat down and that is basically on the verge of dying. But I digress. Like the USC defense has to basically be better than this year. Otherwise, I'm going to throw the heck up. And what's even worse is that USC has to contend with Utah, and guess who's back next year? Cam Rising. So USC has to contend with Cam Rising, which really sucks. It's depressing. But thankfully they have their Heisman winner, Caleb Williams, coming back. And Marcus also says it best right here. The USC defense can't stop a nosebleed. Facts, Marcus. It's depressing, if you ask me. But the defense wasn't. The defense was responsible for 44 of Tulane's points. The other 2 came from special teams, which was a complete gong show. Well, special teams and offense, but that was mainly special teams. So I'm hoping that USC defense is better by the time next year rolls around. So we'll see what happens. All right, but that's pretty much that for college football. I know I went a little bit longer when it came to college football than I needed to, but it is what it is. So jumping on over to college hoops. So UCLA men's basketball is the hottest thing since the Ghost Pepper. They have won 12 in a row, and they pretty much gave a spanking to Utah yesterday, 68-49, which I was very surprised that the game was that one-sided, just because Utah was not a bad team going into that matchup. It's just that they kind of got their core rocked when in their previous game against Oregon, which I think has been underachieving quite a bit. But UCLA is the only undefeated team in the Pac-12, as they are a whopping 6-0, and once again, they've won 12 in a row, as their next game is against Colorado, which actually lost to USC, which USC isn't too far back of UCLA. They're 4-2, so they're only 2 games back of first place. But they still have to contend with the likes of Utah and Arizona State, as well as Arizona and, Arizona. And guess who USC and UCLA play next week? Well, if you predicted if USC and UCLA play Arizona and Arizona State next week, you guessed correctly, because that's going to be a tough matchup. Just because Arizona State has drastically improved, and Arizona is still the juggernaut. Well, I wouldn't say still the juggernaut, but they have kind of reformed into being the juggernaut yet again. So for UCLA, they play Colorado on Saturday, yes, and then USC has a daunting task as they play Utah. Now, I hope USC can actually play to their full capability. I mean, they snapped that 2-game losing streak, which was to Washington State and UCLA, which UCLA, they had that game won, but they just couldn't rebound to save their lives, let alone play defense. But either way, USC playing Utah is crucial, because if Utah loses that one and USC wins, then USC will jump Utah in the conference standings. But you never know with USC. They have been the definition of an off and on team. One week they actually look like they deserve to be ranked, and the next week they look like they nowhere near should be ranked. I mean, they have losses to Florida Gulf Coast, and they also lost to Washington State, which Washington State isn't terrible, but I think that game could have easily been avoided when it came to losing. But overall, I just hope USC can get it done, because next week is going to be brutal. They have Arizona at Arizona next Thursday, and then next Saturday they are on the road against Arizona State. Then after that, they basically have UCLA at home on the 26th, which that could be crucial right there. And who knows, maybe that game could be the turning point for the Trojans, just because the Trojans do have a promising team. It's just that they just have a tough time putting it all together. You know what I mean? So I'm hoping USC can kind of put the pieces together and pick up the pieces and put it all together. Well, for UCLA, no, nothing is really stopping them. But next week is going to be their true test. Matter of fact, their next 3 games are their biggest test, just because Arizona State, that's an improved team. Arizona, we all know how good they can be, even though they've had their inconsistencies. And then USC only lost by 2, despite trailing by as many as 18. But we'll see what happens when it comes to USC and UCLA men's hoops. They're not the only UCLA is not the only team that is hot, as UC Santa Barbara is actually one of the more hotter teams in Southern California in terms of college basketball, as they've actually won 9 in a row, and they are tied atop the Big West Conference standings with UC Irvine. So UC Santa Barbara, on Wednesday they beat Bakersfield 60-48. Last Saturday they beat Cal Poly 62-57. Saturday, they will be at home in the Thunderdome taking on UC Riverside, which UC Riverside's not too far from them either. So the Big West is living up to its expectations. Their only losses were to Northern Arizona and Duke Unis, if that's how it's pronounced. But either way, UC Santa Barbara those are their only 2 losses. Northern Arizona and Duke Unis isn't bad. But other than that, and then I guess they went overtime with Pepperdine, but still, that's still pretty good. That's still not too bad. To be undefeated at this point and to be atop of the Big West Conference is nothing to sneeze at, if you ask me. So, but on the 16th, the Gauchos and the Anteaters will play one another at the Bren Event Center. And man, I wish I didn't have to do set point that day. But I have to, just because set point is my baby. But I digress. So anyway, UC Santa Barbara taking on UC Irvine on Monday is going to be big time. And man, that's going to be a great matchup right there. That's for first place. But UC Santa Barbara has to get past UC Riverside first. And then for UC Irvine, they're also undefeated. Their most recent game was against Cal State Fullerton, where they beat them 70-65. They also beat Long Beach State last Saturday, 87-70. They literally laid down the wood against my alma mater. I hate to say that, but it is true. They also beat Bakersfield 79-75, and they also beat Davis 88-83. So, other than the Long Beach State game, UC Irvine has been rather close with some of these Big West Conference games, but this kind of shows how much the conference has improved. As UC Irvine's next game is Saturday, as they take on Cal State Northridge at Northridge. Unlike UC Santa Barbara's opponent, Northridge is 0-5, and they're only 3-13 on the season. So, yeah. Irvine should be able to win that one. I'm not trying to say that Irvine is going to steamroll them or crush them to a million gazillion fofillion pieces, but I just think it's not going to be a pretty matchup for CSUN. CSUN is in for a long day on Saturday, and to quote Marcus Lowe's great one time, I think UC Irvine is going to be smelling fresh meat on Saturday. But they can't look too far ahead when it comes to their match against UC Santa Barbara. But I digress. So that's that for the Big West Conference. I guess I'll give props to UC Riverside, as their only loss was to Cal State Fullerton, which was a 77-62 loss, which, again, Fullerton is the reigning Big West Conference tournament champion, albeit it wasn't the prettiest champion, but I digress on that. But UC Riverside, they're still in the thick of the Big West Conference standings, and I think they do have that potential, but it's going to be a time will tell story when it comes to them. Especially when they have to play the big dogs such as Irvine and Santa Barbara. That's going to be crucial right there. They do play the Anteaters on Saturday, February 11th, and they also play the Gauchos on Saturday, February 18th, which that could be make or break for the Highlanders, but that's all the way till next month, so we're not going to go look that far ahead. But I just got to throw that out there. And then for the West Coast Conference, we're not going to get into that just because all of the the SoCal teams from the West Coast Conference are, to quote Marcus, sparkling blue toilet water. I mean, the best one of the group in terms of the West Coast Conference is LMU and San Diego. I mean, I'll give LMU credit. They're above 500. They're 12-7. But now that they're in West Coast Conference play, the schedule starts to pick up. I mean, Gonzaga isn't even invincible. St. Mary's is up there in talent. BYU, I know LMU beat them, but they're still up there. Pacific is also improved. And then Santa Clara deserves a lot of credit for their improvement. They have one of the best records in the conference. So overall for LMU, Pepperdine, and San Diego, this is going to be a rough ride for them. Unless, of course, they pull some upsets, which ain't going to happen. Just my polite opinion. I'm not trying to be mean or anything, but it is the truth. And everyone will judge. And then jumping over to some San Diego State men's basketball. San Diego State is the only undefeated team in the Mountain West Conference, as they're a whopping 4-0, and they're 13-3 overall. As Marcus Losgreat, thank you for the heads up in the live chat. He says McVay just announced he'll be back. All right, well, I guess it's a little early for basically doing this, but I gotta give the Big W award to Marcus Losgreat, as he informed me that Sean McVay is indeed back as the Rams head coach. So thank you, Marcus, for announcing that. And yeah, I'm just now checking this on my phone. So Marcus gets the first Big W award of this week, just because. And for those wondering, the Big W award is now a new little segment, which I give out to someone that does something that kind of goes unnoticed, but I digress on that. It's kind of the opposite of the Dum Dum of the Week award, but Marcus is the first recipient of the Big W award, so thanks, Marcus. All right, but back to San Diego State men's basketball. So good job to San Diego State men's basketball as they defeated Nevada on Tuesday 74-65, and they defeated Wyoming 80-75. Now it gets a little bit tougher as, well, okay, they're kind of in their big tough week, as Nevada was actually the other undefeated team going into this week, as Nevada just suffered its first loss to San Diego State, which was big. And then the Aztecs played New Mexico on Saturday. Despite having lost its last two games, up before their win, New Mexico should be quite the challenge, just because that team is 15-2. Their two losses were to Mountain West Conference teams, so it's going to be a little tough for the Aztecs, but I think they're game for them. So make us proud, San Diego State. And I guess I'll also while we're on the topic of college basketball, I'll give a little bit of a mini shout out to USC women's hoops. They continue their turnaround. They did, however, lose a heartbreaker to UCLA. They lost 61-60 last Sunday, which, oh my God, my heart hurts for the Lady Trojans. Their two losses to UCLA have been by a combined 4 points. They lost by 3 the first time around at Galen Center, and then they lost by 1 the second time around in Pauley Pavilion at UCLA. So I'll give UCLA women's hoops this. They're 11-4, but they're 1-3 in conference play. But the Pac-12 is so stacked, and their 3 losses are against darn good teams. UCLA, which is number 12 in the nation both times, and then they got blasted by Oregon 73-45, which is a big yikes right there. And then I guess I should also mention that USC's only other loss was to Texas, which isn't in their conference. But tonight, USC women's hoops will take on Cal at 7 p.m., which is nice. But then on Sunday, USC has to play the number 2 team in the nation, Stanford, at 2 p.m. And unfortunately for USC, I think Stanford is smelling fresh meat when it comes to Sunday. Now, for UCLA, I guess I'll give them their props. UCLA, while they are 3-1 and they're right behind Stanford in terms of the conference, well, they're behind other teams as well, which have played one more conference game than them. But UCLA plays Stanford at Pauley Pavilion Actually, no, I don't think they're playing at Pauley Pavilion. They are playing at Pauley Pavilion. I'm confusing the men's volleyball match that got moved from Saturday to Friday today, with one another. I'm mixing the men's volleyball and the women's basketball game and their gym location. So, UCLA women's basketball plays Stanford at Pauley Pavilion at 8 p.m., and then the men's volleyball team plays Princeton at the John Wooden Center, which is basically the small gym or the lower gym or whatever it is, at 6 p.m. I don't think both teams will play their respective matches at Pauley Pavilion, just because volleyball matches take at least 3 hours at the most. They're at least 1.5 hours at the very least, and the crew would need to have to take off the Terraflex if they don't play on Terraflex, which they clearly do. Anyway, this is not set point. This is SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Anyway, so UCLA plays Stanford tonight at 8 p.m. at UCLA. And here's hoping the Lady Bruins can get the job done. They did suffer a loss on Sunday to Oregon State, losing 77-72, which, ironically enough, USC beat them, but I digress. This is when it comes to conference play, the Pac-12 is probably the best conference in women's basketball, just because every team except for ASU is above 500. The Pac-12 is legit in women's basketball. I would not be surprised if we saw other teams make the NCAA tournament. I mean, there's 5 teams ranked in the Pac-12: Stanford, Utah, Arizona, UCLA, and Oregon. Colorado is 4-1 as well. That's also a team to watch for. And USC, while they have had their big turnaround, most of their wins aren't really against the greatest teams. So, not trying to be judgmental, but I'm just being real. Anyway, that's pretty much that for my women's basketball segment. And I feel bad for Arizona State, saying that every team in the Pac-12 in women's basketball is above 500. Arizona State has to forfeit their game against Utah, which I don't know why. I'm guessing it's because not enough players or certain circumstances, but I just got to throw that out there just because Arizona State, I'm seeing this on the ESPN graphic that Utah wins due to Arizona State forfeit, which is sucky, but it is what it is. All right, that's enough for college basketball right here and there. I guess we'll take a quick little commercial break. When we come back, I'll discuss some NBA, some NHL, the NWSL draft, and then we got to get to the Big W Award and the Dum Dum of the Week. So keep it locked here. You are listening to the SoCal Supreme Sports Show here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. We'll be right back after this.
Some say that Indiana is just a flyover state. Flatlands and cornfields, barns and country roads. What if I told you Indiana is the crossroads of America? What if I told you in all other states, basketball is just basketball? In Indiana, basketball is life. Crowded high school basketball gyms on a Friday night, and every barn with a basketball rim and a frayed, worn-out net. If you're interested in the heartbeat of America, and if you're interested in sports, if you have Hoosier running through your veins, the Crossroads Pod with Aaron X is made for you. Powered by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Each and every week, the Crossroad Pod covers all of Indiana sports. The pride of the horseshoe of the Indianapolis Colts. The blue-collar gold swagger of the Indiana Pacers. The relentless pursuit of a sixth banner for the Indiana Hoosiers. The swing of the hammer of the Purdue Boilermakers. The swoop of the Cardinals of Ball State. The summoning of the echoes of the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. The growl of the Bulldogs of Butler. The intensity of an Indiana fever. The chop of the Indianapolis Indians. At the Crossroads Pod, if it is Indiana, we've got you covered. More than cornfields. More than country back roads. The Crossroads of America. Join me, Aaron X, every week. It's nothing but net.
Are you a fan of Buffalo sports? Are you thinking of changing loyalties and becoming a Buffalo sports fan? Do you even know where Buffalo is on the map? Did you know Canada is closer to Buffalo than New York City? Welcome to the Buffalo Huddle, every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and 4 p.m. Pacific Coast Time on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. I'm your host, Patty Bax. This is a podcast designed for you, the passionate sports fan. I know you love your sports. Who doesn't? I cover Buffalo sports and so much more by bringing in the human elements. I call it Buffalo Sports with a Twist. Join me as we take a journey into the world of Buffalo sports. I guarantee you'll fall in love with Buffalo just like I did. Each week we start with an inspiration, question of the day, a Buffalo fun fact, and our weekly challenge to you, the listener. Come huddle up with me every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and 4 p.m. Pacific Coast Time for the Buffalo Huddle with Patty Bax on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. As we say in Buffalo, go Bills!
Back with segment number 2 of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. Definitely do check out those two shows as the Crossroads Pod talks all things Indiana, as Aaron X will be going live tomorrow at 8 a.m. Pacific Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, while Patty Bax talks all things Buffalo sports with a twist as she goes live every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern. Check her show out. You will not be disappointed as we have to go into segment number 2 of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. So we'll briefly discuss the NWSL draft as Angel City did have the number 1 pick in the draft, I'm going to be honest, I did not know. For those that Angel City was a new team from last year, which barely missed the playoffs, which makes me sad. But they did get the number 1 pick, which makes me happy. And they drafted, can we get a drum roll, please? With the first pick in the 2023 NWSL let's try this again. With the first pick in the 2023 NWSL draft, Angel City FC selects Alyssa Thompson, who actually was a part of the U.S. national team at age 17. She is currently 18 years old, and the crazy thing is that Alyssa Thompson is still in high school. So, my golly, this is going to... Man, I have no words for this. This is amazing. U.S. national team at such a young age, man, that is amazing. She's actually from Southern California, as she currently is attending Harvard Westlake in Studio City, and she actually was in LAX taking off for London 5 days later, or prior. So, man, for her to be the number 1 pick, and for her to be on Angel City, and for her to just keep killing it, it is amazing. And the fact that she was on the U.S. national team since she was as a 17-year-old, that's crazy. It's just so amazing, and it's a dream come true for her. So, good job to Alyssa Thompson, and I wish her nothing but the best going into Angel City. And she actually said when she subbed in, she cried when she was with the U.S. national team. So congratulations to Alyssa Thompson on being the number 1 pick and for being drafted by the Angel City FC. That's just outstanding right there. That's just flat out amazing that she not only gets to stay home, but she was the number 1 pick and she was a part of the U.S. national team. So you got a good one, Angel City. I don't know Alyssa Thompson personally, but I think it's going to be very fun, if you ask me. I think it's going to be so special for Angel City FC. And here's hoping we do get to see Angel City in the playoffs next year. As we welcome John Felipe in the chat room, he says, I know you're killing it. Thanks, John. His show goes live in less than 3 hours from now. So Carolina Cast is definitely going to be something to watch for. And John always kills it. He says I kill it, but Carolina Cast always kills it week in and week out. All right, so that's basically that for the NWSL. So that's the good news when it comes to soccer. Now we've got the not so good news, and I found this news out from a good buddy of mine, Marlon Pasquale, the former Soccer Scoreboard show host, and this comes from the LA Galaxy, and I feel sick to my stomach. So Chris Klein is going to be returning as the LA Galaxy's president despite MLS sanctions, which, well, basically, this dude is probably, I wouldn't say Pete Carroll 2.0, but man, Galaxy couldn't have, I don't know if this was Chris Klein's decision. I imagine it was, but the Galaxy couldn't have another say from some of the other like players or authorized personnel. God, this is sad. This is sad news as Chris Klein is returning. So, well, I don't really have nothing much to say except pray for the LA Galaxy. Just pray for them. They now have a president who still has sanctions. And this is going to be completely messy. And if the Galaxy miss the playoffs, then so be it. I don't know what these sanctions are all about, but it can't be anything good when it comes to this whole thing. Everyone has been wanting Chris Klein to get fired ever since last MLS season. And unfortunately, with him coming back, the ante has been upped tenfold. So, yay! So that is that for the LA Galaxy. And then I went through the good, the bad, and then we gotta give this final farewell. So it was announced earlier in the week, or sometime last week, that Gareth Bale has decided to retire from soccer. So Gareth Bale, as you all know, he was the guy that was heaven sent. He was the guy that joined LAFC's team like more than midway through the season. And he was the one that actually kicked in the equalizer in extra time, which if he does not make that equalizer, that game-tying goal, LAFC does not win that championship, and everyone is basically dunking all over LAFC. But Gareth Bale has decided to retire from all things soccer. Like, the dude has probably had himself a long year, as he's probably played international soccer, and he's played club soccer, and then he just played on the MLS, where he just won an MLS Cup. So Gareth Bale does go out on top, despite a short stint with LAFC. So I wish him nothing but the best in retirement, and yeah, he now has a ring. So here's to you, Mr. Gareth Bale. Alright, but that is that for all the soccer news that I could come up with. If there's any other soccer news that I found out, then I'll let y'all know. But that's pretty much that. Anyway, going over to the NBA. So the NBA, well, the Clippers and the Lakers have had their fair share of ups and downs. The Clippers entering the week, entering the week, they basically were on a major skid. It was kind of concerning, honestly, until Tuesday, where they lost to they beat the Mavericks 113-101, as they were on a 6-game losing streak prior to that, but they beat the Mavericks by 12, which was very nice. Kawhi Leonard scored 33 points, which was a season high, and then Norman Powell added 27 points, which was very good. The Clippers needed that one in the worst way, and I was even concerned with the Clippers when it came to that game, just because they lost to the Atlanta Hawks on Sunday, and then last Friday they lost to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Tonight the Clippers will remain in the Crypto.com arena to continue their 4-game homestand to take on the Denver Nuggets. Then on Sunday they play the Houston Rockets, which they should beat on paper. And then Tuesday they play on national TV against the Philadelphia 76ers before heading away for their little 4-game road trip. But the Clippers are 22-21. Yeah, that losing streak got to the point where the Sacramento Kings are the best team in the Pacific Division. Big yikes. I don't think anyone had that on their bingo card, but the entire Pacific Division has kind of seen better days, as again, it's bad when the Kings are the best team in the conference. But again, they have improved, and then the Clippers, they've been up and down, like I said. The Suns and the Warriors have gone through growing pains, and then we don't even need to speak on the Lakers. But we kind of do, just because it's a perfect segue to go into the Lakers. Now, the Lakers, on the other hand, they actually were on a 5-game winning streak, as that actually, they entered Monday's game on a 5-game winning streak, where they survived a slugfest last Saturday against the Sacramento Kings, 136-134, and then they beat the Atlanta Hawks 130-114. But against the Denver Nuggets on Monday, they lost 122-109. It did not help that LeBron James did not play, just because he and Anthony Davis were out. You know, it was kind of ugly when Russell Westbrook had to carry the way. He had 25 points in the loss. And off the bench, mind you. And then they had to start a bunch of not so effective guys, but they had to start Dennis Schroeder, Max Christie, Kendrick Nunn had to produce 15 points off the bench. And they lost Patrick Beverley in that game too, as he only played 12 minutes, which is not ideal just because that's their dog. And then yesterday, the Lakers lost in double overtime to the Dallas Mavericks, 119-115, which, I mean, there were a few questionable calls against the Lakers that game, but it is what it is. I mean, the Lakers were down for the most part, and they almost came back, but this just kind of shows that not having Anthony Davis is valuable, and fortunately for the Lakers, they did have LeBron. However, he had a triple-double, but he was only 9 for 28 from the field, which is a big yikes right there. And their starters just aren't effective. Like, Thomas Bryant was the only other starter in double figures with 11 points. Wenyen Gabriel, Russell Westbrook, and Kendrick Nunn all had to produce double digits off the bench, and it sucks because I thought the Lakers had a chance to win that game, but unfortunately it wasn't meant to be, and the Lakers have to take the L on that one. So it is what it is. So the Lakers are back at it on Sunday when they play the Philadelphia 76ers. That Mavericks game was the first of a 5-game homestand. They continue the homestand Sunday against the Sixers. Then on Monday they welcome the Houston Rockets. Then on Wednesday, they welcome the Sacramento Kings. And then on Friday, they play on national TV against the Memphis Grizzlies. And then I guess it's worth noting that the Lakers and Clippers play one another on Tuesday on national TV, which is the battle for the clash in the crypto. Because Staples Center is no longer known as Staples Center. It's now known as the Crypto.com Arena. I'm still not going to. I'm still sickened by that. And Marcus thinks he's a funny guy. He says, "Nothing brings me more joy than watching the Lakers lose." LOL. Yeah. Go ahead and laugh it up, Marcus. And he also throws in Go Celtics. And he's probably going to throw in Go Warriors too. But yeah, you go ahead and sandbag all you want, Marcus, on the Lakers. You're a funny guy. And that's pretty much that for the NBA. So what was looking like the Lakers were starting to show promise and be not too far off from the play-in game, now sees them getting further and further back. As currently, in terms of the Western Conference, they are now 13th in the conference. It was at one point where they were tied with a few of the other teams in the play-in spot, but now they are one game back, which is not convenient. And they're behind OKC and Portland, as well as Minnesota and Utah, I guess. So it's just been that season for the Lakers, and it's just been rough times for being a Lakers fan. So we'll survive. But that'll do it for the NBA portion of the show. Jumping over to the NHL, the Kings, they're starting to get hot too, as they have won 3 in a row. Granted, 3 in a row isn't too much, but it can go a long way, as last Saturday they beat the Vegas Golden Knights 5-1, which I guess it's safe to... I guess sometimes the house doesn't always win when it comes to playing in Vegas, as Kevin Fiala had a hat trick for the LA Kings, which was quite nice. In other words, he had a 3 of a kind, and the Kings' 3 of a kind beat the Vegas Golden Knights' high card, which basically means nothing. Anyway, and then on Monday, the Kings beat the Oilers by a football score of 6-3. And then the Kings on Wednesday, they defeated the San Jose Sharks 4-3, as currently the Kings are only 2 games back of the Vegas Golden Knights in the NHL, which we're coming for you, Vegas. Don't be getting too relaxed on that throne just yet. So the Kings play on Saturday the New Jersey Devils, which have vastly improved. They're one of the top teams in the NHL. Then on Thursday, the Kings play the Dallas Stars, which is another top team in the NHL. And then next Saturday, the Kings hit the road to Music City, USA, when they play the Nashville Predators. Or is Music City, USA, Ohio? Either way, I've heard that Nashville, Tennessee has been always known as the Music City. But regardless, the Kings played the Nashville Predators next Saturday. So overall for the Kings, don't let them get hot now, but this is their biggest test right here. Can they beat 2 of the better teams in the NHL? Hopefully they can. I mean, the San Jose Sharks and the Edmonton Oilers were kind of the appetizer for their most recent schedule. Now they get a little bit of the main course, or a bigger meal, when it comes to facing the New Jersey Devils and the Dallas Stars. So now we got to go into the Anaheim Ducks, unfortunately, and it's been the same for the Ducks. They still suck, and it's not fun. So last Friday, the Ducks beat the San Jose Sharks 5-4 in overtime, but that's no big deal, just because the Sharks are no better than the Ducks. And then on Sunday, the Ducks lost to the Boston Bruins 7-1, and then on Wednesday, the Ducks lost to the Oilers, the Edmonton Oilers 6-2. As tonight, the Ducks welcomed the New Jersey Devils, and then on Monday, the Ducks welcomed the the Ducks head to Pittsburgh to take on the Penguins. And then Tuesday, they play the Philadelphia Flyers while they remain in Pennsylvania. So they've got the 2-step Pennsylvania matchup. And then on Thursday, the Ducks will head to Columbus to take on the Blue Jackets. And then next Saturday, the Ducks will play the Buffalo Sabres. Yeah, now they've got a little bit of a road trip after tonight's game against the New Jersey Devils, as that'll actually end their homestand. Their extremely long homestand, for that matter, as they've now got a 6-game road trip, and then they return on the 28th to take on the Arizona Coyotes. So in terms of the conference for the Ducks, they are now back to being the second worst team in the Western Conference, as they're only 2 points ahead of Chicago when it comes to being the worst team in the Western Conference. As it looks, as Columbus continues to do bad when it comes to the entire league. But as for the entire league, the Ducks are still the third worst team in the league, as Columbus and Chicago are fighting for that honor of being the worst team in the NHL. So we'll see what happens when it comes to the Ducks. But I just want the season to end for the Ducks, please. It's not getting any better. The Ducks are now literally fresh meat against some of these big boy teams. But I digress on that. So that's basically going to do it for the NHL. And before we sign on off, I have to give out the Big W Award and the Dum Dum of the Week Award. So we got to start with the Big W Award. So the Big W Award, I already gave one to Marcus Losgate for informing me of Sean McVay coming back, as he was the first one to report it to me. So the second Big W Award goes to Jared Goff, the former LA Ram, who led the Detroit Lions to a victory over the Green Bay Packers. As while the Detroit Lions didn't make the playoffs, they ended the season 9-8, which is much better than what they had last year. And they also swept the Green Bay Packers in the season series, which hadn't been accomplished since the 2017-2018 season, I want to say. And then also the Lions still have the Rams pick, and the Lions still have a bright future ahead of them, especially with Dan Campbell. If the Lions had made the playoffs, I think Dan Campbell would have gotten Coach of the Year. But for Jared Goff, for all the criticism he's received and for how he was just shipped off to Detroit, I have to give him one of the Big W awards, just because what he did in the game against Green Bay kind of went unnoticed, just because Detroit was out of the playoffs, and now they basically played spoiler to their divisional rival, and the former USC coach Pete Carroll is in the playoffs, so that's why I give Jared Goff the Big W award. And also, I guess on that note, I'll give the Big W award to Jamal Williams, who had the best Sunday Night Football introduction when it comes to the players. Normally, players say this person, USC or wherever college they went to, but Jamal Williams had this as his introduction. His introduction was basically Swag Kazakage, leader of the hidden village of the Den. Or actually, it went like Swag Kazakage, leader of the hidden village of the Den. So I didn't even know what he said at first. I'm like, what is he saying? And then someone broke it down. It was actually Swag Kazakage. So I heard Kazakage, which is a Naruto term. For those that know what Naruto is, it's basically an anime, which I used to watch back in the day. I don't really watch it now, just because I have too much stuff going on, and I'm trying to be the best sports reporter or the best volleyball podcaster on the planet. So, what he did reference Naruto, and he did kind of wear a little bit of a Naruto headband, which if you go, just look up Jamal Williams with two A's after the M and before the L. Just look up Jamal Williams Sunday Night Football introduction, and you will see what I mean. It is a priceless introduction. But also, Jamal Williams, the reason why he gets the Big W award is because he broke Barry Sanders' rushing touchdown record on the Detroit Lions as well. And he also won the game. He also got the game ball in honor of his grandpa, who passed away just recently, and he was emotional after the game, and then that emotional turned into seriousness, kinda, when he said, "Stop picking against the Lions, man. This all dog in this mug." And I'm like, well, that escalated quickly. So Jamal Williams gets the Big W award just because the dude is funny, and he broke a record, and he and Jared Goff played spoiler to the Green Bay Packers making the playoffs. in all honesty, though, the Packers would have gotten slaughtered by the Niners, just like in past postseasons. But I digress. All right, so that's that for the Big W Award. If I think of any other Big W Award recipients, I'll probably let y'all know. But now we got to get into the Dum Dum of the Week Award. So the Dum Dum of the Week goes out to someone that does something really dumb. And it can be anywhere, any place, anytime, anywhere, in any one. So I have 2 mini Dum Dums of the Week to choose from. So the first Dum Dum of the Week, the first mini Dum Dum of the Week, goes out to someone that decided to create... Okay, so he eventually catfished everyone, and he tried to impersonate Tuli Pelotu. I don't know who this person was trying to imitate the USC edge rusher or one of USC's players, but I hate this. Every time I see someone create a Twitter account or an Instagram account pretending to be someone else, it sickens me, just because they're trying to be someone who they aren't. And I don't know if I reported that person. I probably should. But to the person who decided to impersonate Tuli Pelotu, or Tuli Pelotu, you are the mini Dum Dum of the Week Award, and I give 0 Fs about who you are. Like, I don't care who you are. Like, the fact that you are impersonating an athlete is just shameful. So that is that for the first mini Dum Dum of the Week Award. And then the second mini Dum Dum of the Week Award goes out to... Okay, so last week I said that one of my coworkers at IE Sports Radio basically gets chewed out from Raiders fans. So this time around, he didn't really get chewed out by a Raiders fan. But a Raiders fan did give him the suggestion of Tom Brady is going to be a Raider. Now, that's not bad at all. However, what he also said is that C.J. Stroud is also going to be a Raider as well. So, if we're keeping score here, he thinks this Raider fan thinks Tom Brady and C.J. Stroud are both going to the Raiders. Currently, the Raiders select 7th in the draft. But my concern is this. How is C.J. Stroud going to fall all the way into the Raiders' lap? I mean, the Panthers are in need of a quarterback. The Colts are in need of a quarterback. There are a few other teams that are in need of a quarterback that ahead of the Raiders. And it's like, how does that make sense? It's like, if C.J. Stroud goes to the Raiders and Tom Brady goes to the Raiders, then the Raiders are probably going to be starting Tom Brady. Does C.J. Stroud really want to sit around behind Tom Brady? I mean, Tom Brady is running out of years, but I just don't see how C.J. Stroud falls all the way down to 7, unless the Raiders trade up. If the Raiders trade up, then that's understandable, but they'd have to give up some key pieces. And then signing Tom Brady is also a crapshoot right there, just because the Raiders' O-line is not the greatest. The Raiders' O-line is pretty abysmal. So, to this Raider fan who said that C.J. Stroud and Tom Brady are both going to the Raiders, you're also the mini Dum Dum of the Week. The mini Dum Dum of the Week. It's good to dream, but that's going a little too far. All right, now we gotta get into the main Dum Dum of the Week award. So, I already attested to this earlier. Brandon Staley, I am not happy with how he played his starters in a meaningless game against Denver. Now, I understand where he came from. You obviously don't want the players to get rusty or the stars to get rusty, and you don't want the players to lose momentum. But you don't need to play them for too long. Just play them a quarter and then just go to your bench and then play the second and third stringers. It just doesn't make any sense, dude. So, and as a result, Mike Williams got hurt, and the Chargers and Staley should be fortunate that it was just Mike Williams getting hurt. It could have been a whole lot worse for Bosa and Kenneth Murray. But for Brandon Staley for making that decision and for saying, it's tough to manage a team, you've got only 53 players on the team. Well, you have third stringers, second and third stringers for a reason. I just can't justify it. I'm sorry. I can't justify the decision that Brandon Staley had for playing Mike Williams and all the starters. He eventually took out Justin Herbert following the third quarter, but still, it's like they're lucky it's only Mike Williams that's hurt. It could have been a whole lot worse. So for Brandon Staley, I hate to do this to you just because you have drastically improved the Chargers a whole lot. And also, you've taken them to the playoffs for the first time in your first 2 years as the Chargers coach. But for your decision of playing all the starters when you didn't have to, when you found out prior, when you even said that that the Ravens-Bengals game is going to depend on if the starters play, which eventually you found out that the Bengals beat the Ravens, yet you still played your starters. You are this week's Dum Dum of the Week award recipient number 1.
You're so dumb.
Wait. Say that again, my dude. Say that again.
You're so dumb. You are really dumb. For real.
So that is the first Dum Dum of the Week, and let this be a lesson to you. Just elevate your practice squad starters and make your starters inactive. And I understand that there was a research saying that 71% of playoff teams that play their starters in the final week of the NFL season go on to win in that certain percentage, whereas only 33% of playoff teams that play their starters in the final week of the NFL season go on to win their first playoff game. I understand, but someone said it best. You'd rather have rusty players than unavailable players because the best ability is availability. And if the Chargers don't have their best players available, they're going to get axed. So now we got to get into the second Dum Dum of the Week. And the second Dum Dum of the Week, there is no justification for this Dum Dum of the Week. So I've been talking about the Lions and the Packers a whole lot. But this guy, first of all, we all have to basically give a shout out. We all have to show appreciation to the medical trainers, the medical staff, all that sort of thing. Especially for the Buffalo Bills. Last week I gave the Big W award to the Buffalo Bills medical staff that revived Damar Hamlin. But for this week, it's a whole different story. We all still have to show our appreciation to trainers all across the world. And every trainer basically has to spring into action whenever there's an injury. So I think it was DeAndre Swift that got hurt, and when that happened, the trainer had to lightly maneuver his way in to treat DeAndre Swift. But then Quay Walker decides, he got his feelings hurt when the trainer had to lightly shove him. I wouldn't say shove him out of the way, but squeeze in and help DeAndre Swift. But then Quay Walker decides to push the trainer with both hands nearly into the ground. So if we're keeping track here, Quay Walker, with two hands, pushed the Detroit Lions medical trainer nearly into the ground after he had to go in there and treat DeAndre Swift. There is no justification for that. The fact that Quay Walker decided to become a complete idiot, push the trainer while he's trying to do his job to try to see what's wrong with DeAndre Swift is unacceptable. What's even worse for the Packers is that Quay Walker earned a 15-yard penalty for the Packers, as that eventually helped the Lions set up their go-ahead touchdown, which eventually helped them win the game. But that's not where it ends. That's far from where it ends. So eventually Quay Walker gets ejected from the game just because you can't push an opposing team's coach or medical staff or any sort of personnel. So Quay Walker gets ejected, and then Quay Walker is throwing a temper tantrum like he's 5 years old and he got his favorite toy taken away because he was bad. But Quay Walker goes into the locker room, he starts pounding on the walls, he starts crying. Dude, you got ejected for pushing a medical trainer just because he needed to do his job. I just can't believe that Quay Walker would do that sort of thing. And he wants people to sympathize for him? Get out of here, dude. Like, that's unacceptable, man. And what's even worse is that this isn't the first time Quay Walker has gotten in trouble, as Quay Walker actually shoved a Buffalo Bills assistant coach, and he got a 15-yard penalty for the Packers, against the Packers, and then he got ejected in that game. So the fact that Quay Walker, let's recap, Quay Walker shoved a medical trainer while he was doing his job, he threw a temper tantrum going into the tunnel, and this was his second incident, as he didn't learn from the previous incident from Buffalo, makes this dude straight up Dum Dum of the Week award material. And you have to show appreciation to all medical staff members. And the medical trainer didn't even shove Quay Walker that hard. Like, I'm pretty sure the push from Walker was much more stronger than a little bit of a nudge. And what was also worse is that Devontae Wyatt, another one of the Packers players, was right behind the trainer as he gave him a light little shove. Now, he's not going to get Dum Dum of the Week just because his shove wasn't as bad because he was just trying to defend his player, but you just can't do that against a medical trainer. So, to Quay Walker, who decided to who basically pushed a medical trainer through a temper tantrum and didn't learn from his mistakes, you are this week's Dum Dum of the Week award recipient number 2.
You are so dumb. You are really dumb. For real.
Say that again. Say that again. Say that again for the people at home.
You are so dumb. You are really dumb. For real.
And that, my friends, is all she wrote. Lesson learned, kids. Learn from your mistakes. Don't be a dum-dum like Quay Walker, who decided to push the other team's personnel. It's just absolutely disappointing. And the fact that he did that to a trainer while he's just doing his job makes him a complete dum-dum. If he's listening to this, I do not care what your excuse was. You have to get out of the way. And it was just a light nudge. Like, I just have nothing more to say about Quay Walker. No wonder the Packers lost in Week 18 and are going to miss the playoffs. I wouldn't want that type of team in the playoffs. And again, Packers would have gotten humbled by the Niners. But on that note, that is going to do it for this week's episode of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. It is that time, ladies and gentlemen, for me to get on out of here. Because I actually got to get out of here pretty soon because I got some NCAA men's volleyball to cover. You dig? I said you dig! Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. I really do appreciate everybody tuning in. If you listen live, I appreciate you. If you listen on the playback, I appreciate you. If you listen at work, I appreciate you. If you listen at any time, any place, anywhere, I really, really appreciate you. Thank you to Larry B., Mike Pat, John Felipe, and my homeboy, Marcus Losgreat, especially Marcus Losgreat, for tuning in. It really means a lot that y'all tune in and took time out of your day. I really do appreciate it. For everyone here at IE Sports Radio, this is Teran Rodriguez signing off. Have yourself a great weekend. I will see you all on Monday for Set Point. Enjoy the SoCal sports action. Enjoy all the sports happening. Salute to you, Marcus Losgreat. I appreciate you tuning in and listening for all game. If you all are in the Long Beach area, I will be at Long Beach State covering men's volleyball for Set Point and IE Sports Radio. So if you're ever in that neighborhood, definitely come by the sports table, say hi, and I'll give you a shout out on Set Point. But until then, have yourself a great weekend, and just remember, SoCal is for SoCal. Peace! And one more thing before I go off. Bolt up, baby. Bolt gang or don't bang. Let's go Chargers, boy!